Illinois Stories is brought to you by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, Illinois Arts Council Agency, and by the support of viewers like you. Thank you.
Hello, welcome to Illinois Stories. I'm Mark McDonald in Monmouth at one of the newest tourist additions to Western Illinois. You know, at one time, stoneware was a main economic driver in this part of the state. Now, a couple has made this the home of their 800-piece collection. It's really worth a visit. Well, Carol Parrish, you're sort of in your second season in this interesting museum. It's called the Stoneware Museum of Monmouth, right?
Correct.
And Monmouth actually chosen because it has a great history with stoneware, doesn't it?
It does. It started with actually a number of different potteries that were in the late 1800s, and then in 1906 they formed with 5 other potteries to become Western Stoneware.
Mm-hmm. And these plants were really all over Western Illinois and Missouri and Iowa, weren't they?
They were. There were 2 in Monmouth, there were 2 in Macomb, then there was 1 in Whitehall, Illinois, 1 in Clinton, Missouri, and another 1 in Fort Dodge, Iowa.
And when you look around this room, you say to yourself, well, my goodness, what a collection. How did this happen? How did all this get here?
It's phenomenal.
It is.
One couple decided that they wanted to help preserve history of Monmouth, and they started collecting, and they couldn't stop.
and interesting, because this collection is not that old. They started only, what, 6 years ago?
That's right.
You can imagine how they built it into, I think, more than 800 pieces.
800 pieces that span about 124 years of pottery in Monmouth.
Let's take a walk through here, a real quick walk, and we'll get a look at the expanse of this collection and how it unfolds. We're going to come back through and look at more specific things, but just for folks who are looking here, these came from all of the 7 plants, and the way they can figure that out when they walk through here is they're actually stamped with what plant they were made, aren't they?
There's a certain area where we do have stamped, but no, if you looked at this, you didn't necessarily know what plant it was from.
Really?
So, you know, the crocks back there, we do know that they are, and those are highly collectible as well when they have the plant number on them. We do know that Weir Pottery, which became part of Western Stoneware, that they only produced stone fruit jars. They never made crockery. So if you go back and see the crocks, you will not find a number 2.
Ah, okay. When you do see the number on there, oftentimes what you're seeing is the number of gallons that this particular pot will hold. So the bigger ones, of course, are 10, 20, 30, 40, and the smaller ones are 2, 4, 5, that kind of thing. So sometimes the number you see is the amount of gallons that the container holds. Now, okay, we're going to come back and look at that. These are actual artifacts from the Monmouth plant, which only closed, what, I mean, maybe 15 years ago or something like that?
It hit its 100th year mark, and then Western Stoneware went away. And so this is some of the artifacts, the table, and other instruments that were used when the plant closed.
You know, this is pretty amazing, because I'll bet the people that stood at this table and worked in these plants have personal experience with that and have probably seen that. And
there are some great stories. There's an older lady that lives outside of town, and she tells how the women had to wear dresses and even hose.
Really?
Yeah.
To work at that table?
Yeah.
Holy cow.
Exactly. So
and they actually the potter's wheel, this looks very similar to what an artistic potter would use. So they actually did spin it just like a potter would today.
And this would have been an older way that they were doing it. And we have a couple examples here too, where you can actually see the irregularity because it was hand thrown, and you can feel the ribs on there too when they were forming that.
You sure can. You sure can. Yeah. So not perfectly made like a manufacturing plant.
Exactly right.
These were handmade, and look at these shaping tools. As that's spinning, I guess they're using those tools to make. Yeah, there's actually one right on the wheel.
There's an example there to show when they were making a lid.
I see, yep. That's how you'd form the lid, or the rim of the lid, yeah.
Yes.
Wow. And this is interesting too. There's a perfectly preserved box from Western Stoneware. And here's Here's a look at how some of them would have been used on the farm.
Exactly right. And this brags that it will preserve eggs for up to 6 months.
No kidding.
In there. And I've set eggs out on my countertop, and they've lasted 6 weeks. So I can't imagine 6 months.
I wanted to get a collection of these pictures over here. We mentioned that there were 7 plants, and number 1, of course, was in Monmouth, right?
In Monmouth.
And this is the one that we mentioned that had its 100th anniversary in 2006.
Well, actually, Western Stoneware, which included Monmouth pottery.
Oh,
see, the name
okay.
changed.
6 million gallons per year.
Exactly right.
I guess that's the amount of clay they went through, or is
that's the amount. So you take the crock numbers.
Oh, the number of gallons. Okay,
and that's
okay.
how they came up with
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Wow. Number 2.
This one is Weir pottery, and that's the one that made the stone fruit jars, and that was housed in Monmouth as well.
Boy, Monmouth must have hired a lot of people in Monmouth to run these plants.
They must have, and Mr. Weir, part of that, also had a plow company.
Oh, is that right? Okay.
All of these individuals were entrepreneurs.
Most people in Macomb know that there was a big stoneware manufacturing plant there as well, and there's a picture of that one.
There was Macomb pottery and then another Macomb stoneware, so those 2 different potteries came in to form Western Stoneware.
And I guess this is the other Macomb plant then. Yep, this is the other one. Why Western Illinois? Was the clay near here?
Actually, one of the largest mines was near Colchester, which is outside of Macomb. And even Galesburg would get their clay from that mine as well. And yes, it was a very large mine, and from what I've been able to research, over 46 acres Western Stoneware owned that property.
Wow. And this is number 5.
This would have been in Whitehall, Illinois.
Whitehall, okay. Yeah, that's just south down near the Illinois River, south of Springfield down near the Illinois River. Number 6.
Number 6 is Clinton, Missouri.
That's quite a reach.
And some of the information says too, especially the last one that we see, Fort Dodge, whenever some of these have burnt, that Western Stoneware here in Monmouth, they collected the board, decided that they would take that money and reinvest it in other plants. So they didn't necessarily rebuild the burnt building, but they invested it in other towns.
And I guess really part of the reason was, I mean, of course the employment was a big thing. You couldn't always hire enough people just in one place, but the railroads ran everywhere. So you could build one here and have it in New York or wherever it had to go pretty quick.
Well, and I asked why Fort Dodge, Iowa, and they said because that was the far reach and they wanted to get that western market. So shipped from Fort Dodge out west.
Fascinating.
And we're still doing research all the time. It's amazing that there isn't a lot of documentation, so we're having to go and look in different archives, and obviously talking to people, that really helps.
Yeah, the Brinkmans, the couple that you mentioned who have this collection and who bought the church and set up all this, been collecting for only 6 years, they probably know where almost every piece is by now.
They have wonderful stories and where they went to get it and the individuals that had it.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we're going to talk to them next. Thanks for sharing this with us.
Thank you.
Ray Brinkman, after only 6 years of collecting, you've got this old church full of pottery.
That's correct, yes.
Where was all this stuff earlier?
Well, we had it stored at a summer house of ours in Dubuque, Iowa, because it had a drive-in basement, and as you can see, some of the stuff is very heavy.
Oh my goodness.
Our Monmouth residence has a basement with the steps, but we could get it down the steps but not back up. So we stored it at a place. I have a little hydraulic table that lifts up to the tailgate of a pickup truck, and we could store it there very easy. So we just kind of had it all crammed in the basement, and here it is.
Yeah, and here it is. And I'll tell you what, for people that love history and love to know how the economy of a certain region developed, you can't understand Western Illinois unless you understand this, because 100 years of, this was an economic driver for over 100 years, wasn't it?
Oh, you bet. Yeah, we were told by somebody during the Depression, this pottery in Monmouth kind of carried the community, because this was really popular during the Depression before refrigeration.
You've got some very interesting and hard to attain pieces here. You say these funnel crocks, which are self-draining vats, are pretty rare.
Yes, they are. For example, that 60 came from a drugstore.
Now it's got the big wooden lid on it?
Yeah, that one in the back, there's a 60-gallon, it's a self-draining vat or a funnel crock. It came from a pharmacy in Arkansas, and it stored Coca-Cola syrup before we had carbonated soda. Huh. And that's what they stored in it. There could be distilleries or various other even commercial type places that use the larger ones. This 30, for example, it came from Los Angeles, California, and we had it shipped FedEx about approximately 3 to 4 years ago. My wife thought I was nuts, but we've never had a chance to buy another one.
Well, you know, and when you say it came from Arkansas and Los Angeles, what you mean is it was built here, and then it was sold to someone in those places, and you're returning it back home. Okay.
Yes, we've just bought stuff where we could. This 20, we drove to Albany, New York to get this 20. It was left in a guy's house. A fellow bought a house from a lady, and he left it under the workbench in the garage. And he advertised it, and we ended up with it.
Well, it goes to show you how, I mean, these things, if you don't drop them or do anything really...
they'll last forever.
Yeah, apparently. I mean, they're very well made.
I mean, you can see a lot of these. They're like, they were used, and they're still like the day they were made.
Some of these are quite intricate, too. Look at the handiwork on
this is called a Cupid. There's 3 sizes of them. 4, 5, and a 6, just a very decorative, beautiful, even in today's world, it's a beautiful item.
Now, let's go over here. Now, we're going to see butter churns. We're going to see some more butter churns as we go along here, but I wanted to, I think we were looking at these larger ones back here.
This 20 back here.
Yeah, and the 32.
The 20 has quite a story. We had just acquired that 30 about 4 years ago in the winter. We saw an ad in one of the pottery listings. Some people in Missouri had a bunch of pottery for sale. I called them. I told them I was interested. I talked to the lady talked to her husband. She says, I think this guy's maybe nuts. He's interested in 10 or 12 pieces of pottery. So we are in Florida. We get home. We go to their place. We get in their garage. And there's that 20. As you can see, it says 20 Ice Water, Monmouth Pottery, Monmouth, Illinois. We had just acquired the 30 a couple months ago. And I asked them what the price was on that 20. And they said, well, it's not for sale. We don't price it to anybody. We had 6, 8, 10 things in mind. The lady was writing a list. We picked out this, we picked out that. I kept looking at her list. I said, what do you want for that 20? And she wouldn't tell me. We was there about 2 hours going through some things. We selected about 6 or 8 items. It was a Sunday afternoon, first time we met the people. And finally it come down to, I said, I want to know what you want for that 20.
She's being coy.
I said, what do you want for that 20? We joke about it now. In the 2 hours we were there, we tell both of them, I don't think I heard 5 words the 2 of you said, because all I thought about was that 20-gallon crock. We ended up with that 20-gallon crock, and that gentleman today is the president of our Stoneware Museum.
I'll be doggone.
We got to be grateful.
What a connection, huh? What a connection. Okay, let's go back here where you got some smaller items. I think you call them the Kmart section.
Well, these are items, newer items made, say within the last 40 years. Here's some new items still in the original package. We just accumulated a couple of those. The blue spongeware is very popular. Here's one of my little favorites. We've purchased items in this room from 31 states. This piece here came from Canada. It has the on it, but it has a hyphen above the E. It's French for tea. It is stamped Western Stoneware, so it was made here, and we bought it from someone up in Canada.
Store your tea bags in there, huh?
So it came from Canada.
Now we've seen a little bit of this earlier. This is some of the artifacts from the factory, but we were talking about butter churns, and these can get pretty rare, aren't they?
The big ones are rare, yes. The 7's exceptionally rare. In fact, we thought it was a fake at first. They didn't have a stamp for it. It's got a handwritten number on it. But the 8s and 10s are very rare. That back 10 there with the spigot, a friend of ours bought it at an auction in Arkansas. He went and got it, and that's how we acquired that 10.
Would it have been common for a farm family to have a a pottery butter churn, or would they use wood, or what? I mean,
way back in the early part of the century, in the 10s and teens, and before refrigeration, that's how they made their butter. With this right here shows the effort it took. Look at the wear on the sticks.
Oh my goodness, no kidding.
These are what you call the dashers. All these sticks sticking up. Look at this.
That's
Can you
where the
imagine
wear.
being about 6 or 8 years old and your mom telling you, "Okay, kids, don't stop till it's butter." Look at this.
And they probably replaced it a few times too.
Oh, it might not be but a lot of these are war like that.
Now this one looks old. Is that number
Yes,
10?
it is old. This
That's
is
a
an
10
interesting.
gallon.
Yes, that's a 10-gallon Monmouth pottery jug with a spigot valve. It came from Texas. It just is. It's a very rare. We think it could possibly be the only one in existence. In fact, we've not heard of another one yet. But it was kind of a story on acquiring it. A friend of ours kind of had it spoken for, and then it came here from Texas to a show in Peoria. We had a funeral of a good friend at the time. We weren't there to buy it on the spot. He didn't want to make a decision on it because you can see the difference in looks compared to some of the others. So we waited and waited. To make a long story short, we ended up getting it bought that night because it was loaded in the van and it was going back to Texas. And we thought, if it goes to Texas, I know
never find it again,
I'll
will
never
you?
see it again. It's a one-time chance to see
Oh
it.
man. A lot of times, like a company, a grocer or a company would put their own label on, and that's what we
you
have
bet.
here. Yeah, put their own label
You
on the
bet.
pottery.
This A Mall from St. Louis, very popular as far as putting their advertising on the products. And the Burlington aerated butter maker, just our neighbors here across the river. The 2 items on the left, we just acquired them this winter. Very proud of those 2. That centerpiece, we went about 3 or 4 weeks ago to Minnesota to pick it up. It was at an antique store.
That is a new acquisition. Yeah.
It's and we like it because it's so complete. It's missing a little shield, but it has the apparatus inside to turn it and everything. It's about as complete as you can get it.
Yeah. And then right in this corner, I understand that the really big ones, the 40s, 50s, and 60s, of course, they're the hardest to move, but they're also the hardest to find, aren't they?
The 60s are getting real hard to find. 50s next, 40s, but this particular 40, excuse me, I want to back up. This particular 30's got quite a story.
Okay, let's hear it.
A gentleman in Upper Michigan had this sitting in his garage for 25 plus years. It came from a house that he himself tore down. Besides the spigot on the bottom, it has 2 holes in the bottom, and it had 2 lead pipes in it, and it was hooked to a windmill out in the yard. And they pumped water in this, and the one pipe being longer than the other pipe, it had an automatic overflow, and it kept fresh drinking water at all times in the crock, in the porch or kitchen or wherever they had it. And the guy that we bought it from tore the house down. The only thing I wished is that he saved the lead pipes. He threw them away. But that was a very interesting story of he had it advertised as a windmill crock, and it had to be made special because it has 2 holes in the bottom of it.
Interesting. You know, your wife helps you in this collection, and she, of course, goes with you when you go. And she likes
She
the
likes
garden.
the little stuff. I like the big
You like
stuff.
the big stuff.
We used to walk in an antique store, and I'd say, "Do you have any 25 or 30-gallon crocks?" And she's overlooking at that little stuff that I had no interest in.
Well, you know what? We're gonna take an interest in it right now with her, though.
That's up to you. I like the bigger stuff. It's just very neat. We tried to be a little picky on condition. As you can see, this 40 here, it has an apparatus like a gauge, so you know how much is in it. It's the only one like that we've ever seen.
Yeah.
It's kind of interesting. Somebody at a business or someplace had something stored in this that they could get to anytime they wanted to, but yet they knew.
And they drilled holes into that to make it work.
They're factory made.
Oh, they are?
You cannot hardly, if you drill these, you'll pop them. We have a crock over there. If you drill them, it'll pop the glaze off the inside. They're super hard. You can drill a hole in them with a diamond bit or something, but chances are you'll pop the glaze on the inside. And I can show you one that's happened to. No, those are factory holes, just like these here. All factory holes. Same way with the spigot valves. They were all, somebody said back then the hole might have been 50 cents or something.
Cindy, Ray says you like the little stuff. He likes the big stuff, and you like the little stuff.
I do. When we go to antique stores, that's what draws my eye.
Interestingly, you know, you weren't alone because Monmouth, or the Western plant here in Monmouth, actually had a garden. They built a garden to showcase some of the stuff they made for the outdoors and for the garden, the kind of smaller, pretty stuff.
That's true.
Yeah.
In the 1920s, they decided to diversify and get away from some of the utilitarian wear, and they started making this gardenware and this artware. It's just beautiful.
Yeah.
Different colors, different patterns, different glazes, various sizes, and so we decided to collect a little of it too.
And actually, they built their own garden on the premises of the factory.
They did.
And as a place, and I guess people from Monmouth would probably go down there and just stroll around and look at stuff.
Exactly. This was plant one, and it was in the 20s and 30s. They said they had over 500,000 visitors to it during the years. And we have talked to a few people who are still in Monmouth that remember visiting this garden.
Now, way back before Western, can you tell me that actually these could be found all around Monmouth? What are these called?
Sure. These are tree stump planters. And these were made by the Monmouth Mining and Manufacturing Company back in the 1870s. But it was just a fun little gardenware to plant. And it is very, very heavy. It's made out of clay that they would have made sewer pipes from.
Okay, and so this was a little offshoot of that, and they thought, well, people, you know, this would go well in the yard.
Yes.
And like you say, people are probably still trying to mow around them because they can't move them.
Exactly. And they're not in good shape if they're in people's yards because they've hit them with mowers, but...
God, they last forever, though. If this is 100 and, what'd you say, from 1880? Okay, we're looking at 140 years old.
Right.
Goodness.
So it was very tough stuff.
No kidding. Pretty stuff, though, too. And look at the glazes on these green ones too.
Exactly, and they're so uniform that you just wonder what artists dealt with these, and who made these, and who had a quality control over them.
Yeah. Do you always find a label or a stamp on these?
You can on some of them. This is an example of one, and this is a little seal or a little logo that says Monmouth Pottery.
That makes it a little easier for the collector, you, the collector, doesn't it?
Exactly.
And it says USA on there too.
It does. And then we have one here that has just a circle that says Monmouth Pottery. And this has the Illinois with the 2 L's on it. So you can see that that's a bit of an older style.
It sure is. It sure is.
And then we have one here. And this has what we call the trophy stamp.
Some of them, you know, some of them had the leaf. Some of them had this. Some of them had the 2 guys in a crock. I mean, they had a different look for different decades.
Absolutely,
didn't they?
yes, they did.
And some of it, like this looks like an Egyptian style.
That's exactly what this is. That's what they call the Egyptian ware. And it's so intricate, and you just wonder what kind of person had to design the mold for these and all the patterns of it.
And all the while that they were doing this artwork, they were also doing this working stuff for the farm and for the factory, you know, so they had a lot of different businesses going on. This kind of intrigues me. I'm not sure
That's what they call a cemetery urn. And you would stick it in the ground and put your flowers in it next to the headstone. And hopefully it would last a long time.
Sure it would. Okay, and you'd come back in another season or the next weekend when you came back to visit your loved one and you'd replace it with fresh flowers.
Yes, you would. Right,
Okay.
right.
That's interesting. Very interesting. And they'd do some utilitarian stuff too, wouldn't they? Because I'm looking over here and I see this real familiar leaf and a clock.
That's right. We think that's from maybe the 60s or 70s. We're not sure how to date it. But yeah, that's just a very fun piece that a very good friend gave us when we opened the museum. And it was just kind of a nice keepsake.
Boy, they just tried to make just about everything, didn't they?
They were into a lot.
And this is a funny little deal right here, too.
This is called an ivy bowl. And this was just such an unusual pattern of the two small bowls. Now, this is not marked at all, but we have this in catalogs. We have catalogs from the 20s through the 40s, and that really helps us identify a lot of this.
Well, Cindy, thank you so much. We appreciate the visit. It's a beautiful place.
Thank you. We enjoy it.
Yeah. The Stoneware Museum of Monmouth hopes for better days when they can invite large groups into the museum. But for now, if you call for small groups for an appointment, you're welcome. With another Illinois Story in Monmouth, I'm Mark McDonald. Thanks for watching.
Illinois Stories is brought to you by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, Illinois Arts Council Agency, and by the support of viewers like you. Thank you.